This is like home. I love coming home. This is so great. Kevin, thank you so much for that very nice introduction. I threatened him before he came out here, not what he could say and what he couldn't say. So it's so great to be with you as always, and honored to be able to stand before this delegation and to talk with you, because you are one of the most powerful voices for the fire service. And I want to say thank you to General President Kelly, who has really stood up and become part of an effort. When I called and asked, will you stand with other national organizations? Because if the IAFF can lead forward with solidarity, if we can bring the other national fire organizations together and we stand with one voice, can we move forward? And to his credit, he said absolutely. And so Ed Kelly has been part of what we call now the National One Voice Fire Service effort. You know, it is important, and you've just heard about reauthorization. It's in your materials, reauthorization of AFG and SAFER. Certainly that is absolutely important, but I want to make sure that you know that the United States Fire Administration is up for reauthorization as well. And as Kevin just noted, there's not been a lot of change over time. In fact, the ceiling for authorization for funding for USFA has been static for many, many years. And what is pending now is that it would elevate that ceiling so that we at the USFA have more funding to be able to talk about your issues inside government. You see, if the USFA is minimized, your voice inside government is minimized. And so just as you talk about AFG and SAFER, please talk about the reauthorization of the USFA as well. You see, it's important that Congress recognizes the importance of the voice of the fire service, not just when we come once a year, all year, certainly at all levels of government, and certainly at the federal level of government. In the Biden-Harris administration, the USFA, along with the IAFF and the other national organizations, have in fact stood together, and with this one voice, we've been able to create a national strategy that we can all stand together and work on. In fact, we have work groups, and the IAFF leaders are leading many of these work groups. And I'll tell you the primary issues that we are facing. One of them is the ongoing threat of climate change and wildfire in our communities. We just heard from Hawaii, and talking about what happened in Hawaii, where more than 100 people were killed. We're watching as wildfire moves across Texas, even now, threatening communities. As long as it's in the wildland and vegetation is burning, that's one thing. That's the U.S. Forest Service. That's DOI. It's national parks. But when it hits communities, it's you. It's our structural firefighters who are expected to respond. And so one of our issues is making sure that you have training to respond, not just in the interface, but in our communities where we have conflagrations, more than one house on fire at a time, more than one structure burning. Strategies and tactics change, and we want to make sure you're all trained appropriately to do that. Another issue that we're talking about is recruitment, and I've heard that mentioned up here this morning as well. Firefighter recruitment, there are some anomalies, but by and large across the nation, it's down. We are struggling in many jurisdictions to have enough firefighters, and once we get them on the list, getting them through recruit training, not losing half of a class during recruit school is still a struggle. And so we have to continue to talk about recruitment and retention on the job. And then we're talking more about cancer. Cancer, we cannot not talk about that. And the scourges of PFAS, and you know that we're continuing on that as well. We have a work group that has actually split into just talking about cancer and talking about PFAS in your gear. Talking about how can we not only make sure you have PFAS-free gear, but what are we going to do with all the old gear? How are we going to fund everybody getting replacement, and how are we going to dispose of the old gear? These are issues that we have to discuss. And we're talking about mental health as well. We have a work group on mental health and continuing to look at how we build resilience in firefighters long before you reach the point of post-traumatic stress. You see, the things that you see are not normal, you know that. And how we process them in a healthy way is incredibly important. And so having programs where we can have mental resilience training for you early in recruit school and ongoing through your career is incredibly important. We have to continue to talk about building codes. You know, when Governor Wes Moore walked out this morning, I talked with him out there. I just sent him a letter on Thursday because there's legislation going to be pending in Maryland on building codes. How many jurisdictions, how many states, how many counties, how many cities cherry pick out of the building codes, the national building codes that are based on science? And they cherry pick because the builders are saying, oh, it's cheaper and faster if we don't have to stick to these codes. Well, guess what? Your risk environment when something goes bad is worse if we don't have building codes in place. And so we continue to talk about how do we reduce your risk in a structure fire, make sure that structure was built to code. And then we're also talking about lithium ion, one of our newest emerging technology fire threats, and the micromobility products that are coming in from China and other nations that carry with them fire risk, and you are the ones responding. As we watch in New York, because they're the only ones really that have the data that's talking about micromobility products, I can tell you here in D.C., we watch as scooters and electric bikes are carried on Amtrak trains. They're carried on the metro system. And it's like the public, they don't understand how quickly that can go badly. And so we're going to continue to fight for these issues. We're going to continue to move with one voice. And we're going to continue to try to make a difference for you. One other thing that I want to share with you is that we're doing in the USFA, and this was my primary goal, I must say, when I came in, and it won't be a surprise to many of you, is that the National Fire Incident Reporting System that you know as INFRS is going away. You can applaud for that, yes? We have to have a national data system that reduces the burden on you putting in data, because if we said many, many times before, you're not very good at it. And so we have to make sure that we have data that's accurate. We have technology that can gather data. I don't want you to go back and have to put in data at the fire station and make things up just because it's easier if you do it that way. We have to have data that tells a story, because as you know, if we can't bring the information to tell our story, the fight is so much harder in every one of these issues that we talked about. And so you're going to see the rise up of the National Emergency Response Information System, or NERIS. In the next few months, we're going to start onboarding a few more departments, around 50. We've got a few on now, 50 more in the summer, and then it will be open for onboarding in the fall. Make sure your departments are prepared. Make sure they've got a data leader in the department who's ready to do your onboarding. I can't tell you how critical having data which is near real time, not 2 years old like we have today, near real time information for decision making at the local level, at your state level, and at the national level is critical to making sure your needs are met and defended along the way. So as we move forward, I thank you for your continued support of USFA. I thank you for your continued speaking out with one voice for the nation's fire service. We will move forward, and your voice will be heard from the United States Fire Administration. Thank you for your time this morning.